Hello there, what is going on? Big news for Star Wars the Deck Building game at PAX Unplugged. Fantasy Flight at the in-flight brief had a lot to say about the Star Wars Deck Building game. Well, maybe a little bit to say, but some very big things to say about the Star Wars Deck Building game. We're going to talk about a new expansion that was announced. It's very, very exciting. At least teased, I would say, more than announced, but definitely an official announcement of a new expansion for Star Wars the Deck Building game. If you guys aren't familiar with Star Wars the Deck Building game, it is a hugely popular game that has been out for a few years now. It's seen a couple of expansions. It's seen a Clone Wars edition as well, which is able to be a standalone game or interlaced with this one where you can kind of pick your faction and throw them together. There's if you're familiar with deck building games, it plays just as you would expect. It also kind of fits right in. If you're familiar with Star Realms, it has a lot of similarities to that, with some notable differences. But it's surprising in how enjoyable it is, while it's also rather simplistic. I've had my criticisms of the game in theory, but while playing it, it's just a wonderful game. And it's nice because they also have a Mandalorian expansion coming out. This is actually coming out very, very soon. If you were at PAX Unplugged, you could get you may have gotten first dibs on it, and I'm super jealous because I will definitely want to check out the Mandalorian faction pack for Star Wars the Deck Building game. This one is coming out very, very shortly for the rest of us. And they talked about this one a little bit. Again, the in-flight brief isn't only new things, it's also talking about the stuff that's already been successful and the stuff that's coming out now, as well as the stuff that's coming out next year. Mandalorian Faction Pack does bring a Mandalorian faction into the game, but it is not a standalone core set. This is one that's going to augment one of your other core sets and be a way to change your games up a little bit. It also introduces a 3-player free-for-all mode, which kind of splits things in kind of like a triangular fashion where you can play 3 players if you want to do that. This one also, again, very sought after. A lot of people are looking forward to this one, and it makes a lot of sense that this would fit perfectly into the game. But they also teased a new expansion. Now, before I talk a little bit about the expansion, because there's not a whole lot, but there's a little bit, and I can definitely speculate on that. I do want to remind you guys, if you guys are new here to the channel, we are doing 12 days of Life Day. This is going to be 12 giveaways that we run all throughout the month of December. If you want to have a chance to enter to win any of these giveaways, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my other videos. I want to hear some of your thoughts on this mystery expansion. Let's go ahead and take a look at the showcase art that they've shown us for this new expansion that's coming summer 2026. Notably, the Death Star and the Ghost are featured here. There's a little bit more if we want to read into it, though. There's TIE Fighters, there's X-Wings, there's a Star Destroyer, but there's also, if you look, eagle-eyed viewers may notice that that's a Venator Star Destroyer, or so you got a Venator in the back there, which is a very cool thing. So we've got some Clone Wars era stuff that is not really Clone Wars era. Maybe it's like early Empire. Everything kind of fitting into not just the Star Wars Rebels timeline, but I think this also fits into the Bad Batch timeline as well. I think it's very likely that we're going to see things that we haven't seen before in the Star Wars deck building game, which of course makes a lot of sense. I think that depending on how the Mandalorian faction goes, since they seem to span multiple eras, this one, I imagine the Mandalorian expansion would fit right in with whichever this one. Now, they didn't give us the name of this expansion yet. This is just some teaser art, but based on what we're seeing here, obviously a Star Wars Rebels focus. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff from the Star Wars Rebels. And this also probably would deal with the stuff that we're going to see in Ahsoka as well. Granted, Ahsoka is basically Star Wars Rebels, like the conclude, another season of Star Wars Rebels. But I think that this can have things like Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati could potentially be in this. Theoretically, maybe not. It doesn't seem, based on this art, that will be the exact focus, but I do expect characters from the Bad Batch, possibly some characters from Kamino, Omega, probably to show up in this one. The Death Star itself, it's curious to me that they are also featuring TIE Fighters and X-Wings, because it makes me think, could like a trench run be part of this? Are they going to add new mechanics? since there's a focus on space here and not so much a tease on any ground units, does this mean that there's going to be new mechanics and new way to play? What kind of expansion is this going to be? Because typically with the Star Wars deck building game, we're going to run through them one more time, and I want to point out some key differences with this image versus everything else that we've seen for Star Wars the deck building game. If you look at the original version, you've got Luke versus Vader, and of course this one was the Galactic Civil War. Makes sense. If you look at the Clone Wars edition, you've got Obi-Wan versus Grievous. Okay, this is Clone Wars. It makes perfect sense. If we look at the Mandalorian faction pack, standalone pack, we've got Mandalorians. We've got stuff from the Mandalorian. We've got Din Djarin. We've got Grogu. We've got the armor. We've got Bo-Katan. We've got the stuff from the Mandalorian, of which there is quite a bit. And that's really cool. But what all of these have in common is they're focused on ground troops. Now, yes, there are starfighters. There are ships. But I would say that the Star Wars deck building game is largely based on ground. It's largely based, because it's kind of got three different categories of things. It's got some capital ships, a few, and then some kind of smaller. It's got large and small capital ships, everything from like a Corellian Corvette to a Star Destroyer, right? But it also has starfighters. It has the X-Wings and the TIE Fighters and stuff like that. But it has the... So it's got the spaceship area, but it's also got the ground vehicle area as well. And it's got things like everything from the big AT-AT walkers down to smaller things like a ATST and things like that. Things that you can see in some of your more modern tabletop games. But that's kind of just like half of it. The other half is the people, the characters. That is a large part of Star Wars the deck building game. We've got a lot of characters that because the Force is also a part of this game, and the vehicles really don't use the Force. So the characters are the most prominent. I don't have the math in front of me. I feel like it's probably like 60-40 in favor of characters. Mostly characters with a sprinkling of vehicles, and amongst those vehicles, it's like half on the ground, half in space. So not a whole lot in space, but the capital ships do go out there and they do some blocking, and they work in that regard. So with all of that being said, all of these have this in common. And that's really, when you think about it like that, this new Star Wars the deck building game expansion, the 2026 summer expansion for this, the art, it doesn't feature a single character. And I think that's telling. I think that they're going to be taking this game in a slightly different direction, and it's going to be very interesting. I don't know if it's going to be an all-new mode, if this is going to be a completely separate standalone kind of experience, or if it's just going to feature more. Maybe it's just simply a heavier emphasis on vehicles, maybe a heavier emphasis on space combat, which of course is probably a good idea considering there's not a whole lot of games under Asmodee right now that feature space combat. Is very few. There's a little bit in Star Wars Unlimited, but that's it's very abstract, right? And then to a small extent, there's a little bit in Star Wars Rebellion, although that's a strategy game and not a combat game. But this one, maybe it's going to kind of add a heavier emphasis on starfighters, and you've got an incredible range of sizes here too. You've got the small fighters, the one person, one pilot fighters. You've got the large freighters with the Ghost, for example. You've got the large capital ships like the Imperial Star Destroyer and the Venator, and then also you have the Death Star, which is the biggest thing ever, right? Well, Death Star 1 in this case. Death Star 2 was technically bigger. So everything in here is in the space realm, and I wonder if the entire expansion is going to be exclusive to the space realm, if it's going to be an alternate way to play. And that could be very, very cool, because if they're doing this, does this also mean that there's room for a Clone Wars version of this? Because this is also primarily the Empire versus Rebels. This is really, while there is a Venator in there, It's clearly an Imperial Venator. At least it looks to be an Imperial Venator, from as far as my eyes can tell. Being in front of a completed Death Star. So yeah, like again, whether or not that's some Venator from like early, because there were still Venators in service during the time of Star Wars Rebels, but there were a lot more Venators in service during the time of the Bad Batch. So I think again, it's somewhere in there. I think there's room for both of those, and a lot of the new shows and things like that. So, but I noticed that there's not Clone Wars stuff going on here. So maybe this is a new direction for the game and the first step in many, because then maybe there will be a Clone Wars version of Space Star Wars, the deck building game, and maybe there's going to be a Scum and Villainy standalone expansion, kind of following the same pattern of first Galactic Civil War stuff on the ground, focused mostly, then Clone Wars stuff on the ground, focused mostly, and then Mandalorian stuff on the ground, focused mostly, right? But then maybe they'll do Galactic Civil War, then Clone Wars, and then concluding with like a maybe pirate faction, Scum and Villainy, stuff like that. That it's all possible. It's maybe not. But those are some of my guesses. Those are some of my thoughts based on this. Again, as they didn't really tell us much about it. There's no official announcement article, but this was talked about during the in-flight brief at PAX Unplugged. And I think it's exciting, and I wanted to share it with you guys, as well as speculate a little bit, because speculation is fun, and it's fun to get lost in our ideas and our thoughts and our hopes, as long as we leave room for what actually comes and prepare to just enjoy it for what it is. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you guys so much, and big thanks to my patrons. You guys are amazing and help make this whole channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all, and always wash your socks.